Good afternoon, and Suidlanders, and welcome to Suidlanders, the week in review for Friday, the 12th of May. Without further ado, I'm going to get on with it because this has been a bit of a rough week for me. I've been sick in bed, which is why you haven't heard much from me. I've been working from bed. I've gotten up once or twice, but to go to the shops. But spent the rest of the time on my back, sadly. It's been a wasted week. Anyway, what can we tell you? Beginning last week, Saturday, the 6th of May, we heard that Ramaphosa would deploy 800 South African National Defence Force members to protect Eskom power stations. And it later came out that it would cost something like 146 million rand. Who knows how they come up with the numbers that they do, and who knows what farce is going to ensue. But doubtless it will provide us much fodder for entertainment. Eskom wants to be able to force people to switch off geysers and appliances. Some videos did the rounds in which at least one or two experts spoke about the threat that these remote controllable items that Eskom wants us to install would how they could compromise our own decision making and monitor our behavior patterns and use of electricity, and that caused a bit of a fuss. The CEO of Pick n Pay was much quoted after he spoke about the likelihood or probability of food shortages in South Africa. Of course, we have been forecasting this for a couple of years now. It is inevitable, it is on its way, and it promises to be very painful. Although, of course, nobody knows exactly when they will fully implement it. The banking crisis in the USA has spread. By the last weekend, we were seeing this on Monday, South Africa Monday. There were many reports coming out about the severity of the contagion among US banks of technical insolvencies. And the Telegraph of London, the Telegraph newspaper, arguably the most highbrow newspaper, which is not to say that the highbrow doesn't equal honesty, but nevertheless one of the most prestigious newspapers in the world, and arguably the most prestigious newspaper in Britain, revealed that of the 4,800 banking institutions in the USA, over 2,000 are insolvent. That promises to become a very big matter indeed. It's only going to get worse. By Monday, we were all looking at a graph, I'm sure you've seen it, revealing that in 2023 so far, we have had more hours of load shedding. I think by Wednesday it reached this point, today of course being Friday, and that graph came out roughly on Monday. That by roughly Wednesday, we had more hours of load shedding in the 131 days of the year thus far than the aggregate hours of the load shedding days of the whole of 2022, which says a lot. RFK Jr. RFK Jr. is Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr., the son of RFK Sr., Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy's full name was Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy, brother of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Jack Kennedy. The son is now running for the US presidency as a Democrat. His father was assassinated in 1962, and his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. And some years later, his father. He is now saying that the evidence is overwhelming, that it was perpetrated by the CIA. I passed a comment on one of my groups, one of the Suidlanders groups that I run, as if I was quoting him, but I was making it up. They killed my uncle when he was the president, then they killed my dad when he was on his way to becoming the president, and now I want them to let me become the president. He seems to be taking a very great risk. Stanley Druckenmiller, the very, very, very famous investor, did an interview in which he said that America's debt crisis is like watching a horror movie. Like sitting on the beach at Santa Monica in California, worrying about whether a 30-foot wave will damage the pier running out into the sea in front of you, when you can very well see that there is a 200-foot wave behind it. Sasria, the Sasria story, as we said, hierdie is inderdaad baie ernstig. Sasria withdraws circulars announcing the scrapping of riot cover in case of blackout for now. South Africa's special risk state-owned insurer has withdrawn circulars announcing that it will no longer provide cover for damage to property caused during riots and protests in the event the electricity grid collapses. At the end of last month, April, Sasria issued circulars announcing that it would not indemnify, would not cover people and businesses from any loss, damage, cost or expense directly or indirectly caused by, arising out of, in any way or to any extent contributed to by, or in connection with electricity grid failure. This exclusion equally applies to any riot, strike, or public disorder that are directly or indirectly caused by the grid failure. And that was received very, very badly. Obviously, it's a terrible threat to the country if the insurers of last resort are saying, we won't take responsibility. Then, of course, the insurers beneath them are not going to assume that risk all by themselves. And so the entire risk ends up the problem of the insured, or as the case may be, the person who's actually not really insured. It was received very badly, and that was withdrawn for now. Watch this space. Next, we had on Tuesday, we received reports on international sites that Russian gold production has risen significantly along with the country's bullion reserves. And that's consistent with a lot of what we're hearing out of Russia, that the economy seems to be doing well, that their reserves are improving, that they're selling more oil, that they're getting better prices for it. And there are, in fact, numerous videos on YouTube by foreigners living in Russia, perhaps married to Russian girls in many cases, in which those foreigners go into local shops and demonstrate that in many, many, many cases there are more brands and more items of various sorts available now than they could recall from prior to the implementation of Western sanctions. Lo and behold, on the same day, we heard that Pakistan is switching to Chinese yuan to buy Russian oil. Then we had Moscow's Victory Day parade, and it was an interesting occasion. Long speech. It seems as if Vladimir Putin simply remains committed to seeing the thing through to the end. And I put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to see a hang of a lot more pain from that region of the world before it's over. Pakistan has been in turmoil. The former Prime Minister, Imran Khan, was deposed, and since then there's been a lot of rioting and unrest and demonstrations and what have you, shenanigans in the parliament, and now he's been arrested, and his supporters are very, very unhappy. City Power announced that it will only respond in future to power failures where at least 70% of the affected people in the area. So in any given area that has a power failure, 70% of the people within there must be paying customers. Eskom expected to implement up to stage 10 load shedding. We had the banknote with the misspelling. We saw the rand go to a United States dollar 1884 on Wednesday, 1884 to the US dollar on Wednesday. Excuse me if I'm a little bit off. I'm not feeling all that well, I must tell you. I'm fine, but not thinking as clearly as I would like to. Then we saw the rand go to 1892 on Thursday morning. I beg your pardon, Wednesday afternoon. Heaven forbid it, the first baby born using DNA from 3 people was born in Britain just a few days ago, and it was reported. Heartbreaking to we Christian conservatives. Then in quick succession on Thursday, the rand went to 1898, then 1908. I'll give you a live number right now. As at 1635 on Friday, the 12th of May, it is 19 rand 28 cents. Donald Trump was convicted of rape or of sexual misdemeanor and of defaming a lady, and he's adamant that it was a wrongful conviction, if that's the correct word. And CNN hosted a so-called town hall interview of him, a special. They did a special with him. Expecting, I'm quite sure, to absolutely crucify him following that verdict that he so strongly rejects. Wow, he made an absolute fool of that poor CNN lady who interviewed him. Goodness knows where she's going to find the face to ever appear in public again. It was a masterful performance. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look it up. It's really worth watching. The US ambassador accused South Africa of arming Russia. Do you remember the Lady R story of the Russian freighter ship that docked in Simonstown and was observed to be offloading and loading through darkness over a few days? In darkness. Do you remember how I think it was the DA or the Vryheidsfront Shadow Minister of Defense or his people followed the trucks that were loaded from the Lady R, from Cape Town all the way to, I think, Waterkloof, to an ammunition depot, an arsenal? Well, the US ambassador has said in strong terms, in fact he used the words, "I would bet my life on it," that it is true. You'll have to excuse me for a second. That part of that undertaking was that South Africa furnished arms and ammunition to Russia. And now, of course, there's a hang of a hullabaloo, but we would say to you that it's absolutely childlike. Quite simply because if the United States of America, never mind all the considerations in the world, if anybody believes that South Africa would jeopardize its relationship with BRICS at this juncture in history, that BRICS is promising to change the global world order, throwing off the yoke of US total hegemony, or hegemony if you like, they're very naive. The reality is that South Africa was always bound to do it if they were called upon to do so. They, the government, the ANC. So, whether you agree or not, it was perfectly natural, and I put it to you, inevitable behavior. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This is one of our shorter weeks in review, and thank goodness for that, because I don't feel very delicious. But thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and hopefully by Sunday I'll be well again. I'll be able to do my big international Sunday interview that attracts, as a matter of interest to you, more listeners than CNN gets viewers for its flagship nightly news program in the USA. A very big interview. I'll do that on Sunday, hopefully, and hopefully make a bunch of videos to play some catch-up for you. Okie dokes, everybody. Goodbye, and God bless you.